apologize. I probably got some students' hopes up, but just for future reference for me, though, I'd like to know kind of where our classroom's at. So which one would you choose? So either giving let me get the polling up here in just a moment. All right. So which one would you rather choose? Work with a group or work by yourself? I know both kind of that would make sense. Like there's times that I want to work just by myself and sometimes that I want to work in a group, but you got to choose one or the other. The majority of the time, if you had the option to choose, which one would you rather choose? And if you would like to state your case this morning, I will turn off my microphone and we'll give the opportunity for anybody to share their side as to why they chose a particular side. Or you can share it in chat as well.
I mean, if you're in a group, you can always like pull away if your group members are too distracting and all. But I mean, if you're by yourself, you can't really just walk up to some random people and say, "Hey, I want to work with you. Where are you at?" Because you're like maybe in different parts of the assignment, that stuff. So work with a group, and if it's like not the best choice, you could always pull away. So
I love how a lot of students are saying, it could be sometimes you could rely on your other group members to help you with questions. Definitely that could be the case, right? If you've got other people that are going to help you, that would be super helpful. Go ahead, Javier.
It would be helpful. Like if you didn't know the question, you could ask somebody, like not to like give you the question, but help you, give you hints. And like most of the time,
go ahead, Javier. I saw your microphone was on and then it off.
Most of the time, you want to like most of the time we do.
He'll get back on here in just a moment. I think there's some background noise or something that's going on his end, but yeah, you could get sidetracked. So you may have some group members though that may not put, their full effort into a group project, which has happened. I've been in some group projects where I, have done quite a bit of, of the work. Like I end up doing most of it and it just gets so frustrating because you rely on your other group members and your teacher probably says, well, you got to have every single person participate. So here we've got our answer. Most of us would rather work by ourselves, but it's kind of a little close-ish with 29 out of 32 that have answered. So working by yourself, at least you're holding yourself accountable, but working with a group, at least you can split up, the group work sort of deal. So I love that. Awesome job. All right, let's dive into our lesson for today. So we are in lesson 1.05, and you'll get to see my awesome handwriting again today. 1.05. We are in part B of the Magic Prison. So we're going to be analyzing the Magic Prison, and we've determined the theme of the story with there's no greater power than empathy, but kind of tweak that theme just a little bit, and it'll help you with your exit ticket. Hopefully today, the website that I wanted to use yesterday will work. I worked out a glitch. So if you can't hear Jasper, refresh your, he won't be able to hear me. But anyways, we will try that website again and see if it works today. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I think I got it fixed. So how will we do it? We're going to identify the theme and central idea of the Magic Prison, as well as the meaning and symbolism used in the text. We talked about symbols before, but we'll dive in a little bit deeper into those. Determine the figurative meaning of words and phrases. I'm going to close chat here in just a moment because I think we're getting a little distracted still by that last would you rather question. Draw inferences about the Magic Prison and provide evidence from reading to support your inferences. So what should we keep in mind? That remember, the theme of the story is what the author wants to learn from the story / the author's message to the readers. Remember, that's the key thing. So it's different from central idea. The theme of the story is what the author wants you to learn. So kind of like that main message. So we talked about with the stone, be grateful for what you have. Don't fear old age. Those were all a part of the messages that the author wanted you to learn from that story.
Yeah, they're like lessons.
Exactly, right? Life lessons for sure. And why are we doing it? It's because discovering the theme of a story will help us determine the author's message to readers. So, some few key words to remember. We've talked about central idea and theme, but remember, central idea is what a literary text is, what it is mostly about. It's in about 1 to 2 sentences. So you can kind of think of it as like a quick summary, but it's mainly what the text is about. Symbolism is that literary technique of using something to stand for or represent another idea. For example, a dove frequently symbolizes peace, while a single red rose symbolizes love. You can think of like, especially around Valentine's Day, is that key like day where there's everything's red, there's roses, there's chocolate, like that symbolizes love. Theme, the main message that the author wants to communicate to the reader. So you see how those are different. So if I were to ask you for the central idea of, the magic prison, we could say it is about a young prince who learns how to show empathy by, the theme or this, let's try that again. So the magic prison is about a young selfish prince who learns that empathy is the greatest power, something like that, or learns how to empathize with a bird. That could be that central idea. The theme is that there's no greater power than empathy. That's what we learn from the story. All right, so reflecting on what you've read. So in fiction, the central idea is what the text is mainly about, but how can you determine the central idea? Pay attention to the details of the topic, setting, characters, and plot. Think about what the characters do and what happens as a result. How do Prince Harwita's action point to the central idea of the text? So let's review the order of events in the story to help us determine that central idea. So in the magic prison, Harwita gazes into the mirror so often he can't notice them narrowing. Prince Harwita awakes to find himself in complete darkness. Then Prince Harwita frees the birds and says, "You shall be free, even if I cannot," and shatters the window pane. The palace shakes, the iron doors fly open, and Harwita's godmother brings him back to his parents. So analyzing these key elements by showing the events of the story help us determine the central idea. When he finds himself trapped and alone, a young prince learns the importance of kindness and selflessness. That's a better central idea than what I tried to come up with. So that's what we can come up with as a central idea. It's one quick sentence that basically gives the main idea of what the text is about. Kind of like if I were to say, okay, give me like that elevator speech in a way, like give me that, quick summary. That's basically what this is. It's just a quick little, sentence or two that's going to basically tell us what the text is about. Once you've determined the central idea, you can then identify the theme. The theme is the big picture message the author wants to convey. Remember, it's what the author wants us to learn, that main message. So how does Prince Harwita change over the course of the story? I'm going to turn it over to you all with microphone, and I'll open up chat as well.
I don't actually think I was there, but I'll take a guess. I'm thinking what, because what you said, Prince Harwita, like he changes because like before he like was like selfish and like rude. I think then he learned like the selflessness and all of that. So he changed. He changed from being selfish to not being selfish, and yeah.
And I'm just opening up the microphone still, just in case any students want to just come on and talk about their answer.
He was very selfish at first. Then he changed. He learned the importance of caring. And if you watch the story, he turned out to be a great king and helped his people and very wise.
Excellent. I love how we're using character traits. Go ahead, Cole.
That I looked backtrack and why would the bird be a part of the story, and then I realized the mirror stuff and godmother locked the bird up there, so if it gets dark, he would be able to open the window back up if he really wanted to.
And the bird's a vital part of the story, right? If it wasn't for the bird, I don't think Prince Harweda would have showed empathy at all. So that really helps tremendously, right? Absolutely. Excellent job, everybody, with those answers. Yeah. So we know from the story, I love how we're using our character traits. So he starts off as a very selfish prince. He only thinks about himself, even as he goes into the magic prison. He's basically looking in the mirror and being like, ooh, I'm Prince Harweda. I'm awesome. Just like looking at himself, only analyzing and thinking about who, him and his superiority. But as the story progresses, he sees this little bird and he feels sorry for it. He feels like, oh my gosh, this bird is going through more challenges than I am. So I need to save this bird. He starts to show empathy. So I love how we're using those character traits and thinking about, those ways to describe Prince Harweda and how he's changed throughout the story. So we've kind of dived into the theme yesterday, but let's look back in the last few paragraphs to really develop that strong theme in the end. So you shall be free, even if I cannot be, he said to the bird. 2 or 3 strong blows shivered the small pane, and the bird swept out into the free air beyond. Ah, my pretty one, how glad I am you are free at last, cried the prince, watching the flight of his fellow prisoner. His face was bright with glad, unselfish joy. The small pink marble palace shook from top to bottom. The iron door flew open, and the fresh wind from the sea rushed in. Prince Harweda could hardly believe his eyes as he sprang to the door. There stood his fairy godmother, smiling, with her hand stretched out toward him. Come, my godchild, she said gently. We will now go back to your father and mother, the king and queen. Great indeed was the rejoicing in the palace when Prince Harweda was returned to them, a changed boy, kind and thoughtful to all about him. Many a struggle he had with himself and his old habit of selfishness. But as time passed by, he grew to be a great and wise king, tenderly caring for all his people and loved by them in return. So we talked about what we think of the theme of the story is. And we talked about, too, how writers use motivations and actions to really help us determine that. So you already know that writers use character motivations and actions and consequences of actions. Remember, we saw that with Mabon, especially. He decided to wish for the stone because he didn't want to grow old, and he saw the consequences of it. His baby was teething constantly. There weren't any crops because everything just stood still. Prince Harweda's motivations and actions developed the theme, people often make their own prisons. Writers also use literary devices or tools such as symbols to create the theme. So now we're going to dive into those symbols and how they play such a vital part in stories. So what is a symbol? You may have already heard of symbolism before, but you may also be like, well, I might need that little bit of a review. So a symbol is something that stands for or represents another idea. So for example, we talked about the dove with an olive branch, and its beak is symbol for peace. Authors sometimes use symbols to tie objects, places, or events in a story to the theme. For example, an author may use a dove perched between 2 people in a story to show that they have settled an argument or become friends. Like extending the olive branch, you may have heard of that phrase before. That means to try to make peace with someone. An author's use of symbols in a story is called symbolism. Paying attention to symbolism clues you into deeper meaning of a story, which is told through symbols. So 3 ways to discover what a symbol stands for are to think about words and phrases that describe the real object, notice what happens to and around the object, and then draw conclusions from how the characters react to it. So before we dive deeper into this and talk about like the symbolism from the stone and the other stories that we have read, just kind of, I'm going to open up chat and microphone. What are some symbols that you can think of?
A
An
rose.
Olive Garden.
A rose for love.
Sending a garden to show that more people care. To expand whatever they were doing.
A heart for love.
So you can think about too, Colin, I like how you said the golden arches, you know, how we can think of McDonald's with that can represent smiling for happiness. Absolutely. Yeah, we could easily, like, those logos can easily be symbols, right? They can represent and stand for something. So you think about an apple, for example, standing for the Apple logo, or Target. There's actually, like, with Starbucks, there's like that backstory to it about the whole mermaid that's on the front of it. But thinking about in literature, we're more focused on not logos, but more focused on different things that are in the story. So let's talk about here in a moment purple. That's a great one. That's a great symbol, right? If you have somebody that is in a story, especially in the past, that was wearing purple, purple was harder to make. And typically only the rich had purple clothing. So if you ever read stories about somebody that's wearing purple clothing in the past, especially, that always represented royalty, because they typically were the only ones that were able to keep or have that type of clothing. So let's dive into the symbol of the stone. So the stone is a symbol, of course, in the stone. That's why it's called the stone. But notice how different characters describe the stone in different ways. At the beginning of the story, Mabon calls it a gift. It brings him the gift of not growing older. But Mabon's wife, Matrona, the stone is simply a bit of rock, no better than you dig up in this cow pasture. However, it does disrupt her home when nothing changes. So he calls the stone a cursed thing. So see how Mabon calls it a gift? Madrona is calling it a cursed thing and is not happy with it at all. Finally, Dolly knows that wishing on the stone defies nature's way. He says, before you know it, you're mired in time like a rock in the mud. So we get this, like, you know, the stone that has so many different emotions attached to it, but based on different characters. One character's happy with it. One character's disappointed with it. Another one's like, well, I know the consequences, but it's not going to affect me too much. So what does it mean? Mabon tries to get rid of the stone many times during the story, but it always reappears. When Mabon finally goes to Dolly, the dwarf tells him that the stone keeps coming back to him because he doesn't really want to give it up. In the back of your mind and the bottom of your heart, you didn't want to change along with the rest of the world. So long as you feel that way, the stone is yours. So again, let's read this again. And the question that I'm going to ask you is, what do Dolly's words help you infer? So in the back of your mind and the bottom of your heart, you didn't want to change along with the rest of the world. So long as you feel that way, the stone is yours. So what do Dolly's words help you infer? What do we
That
think
the
here?
stone is evil.
Something about in the back of your mind and deep in your heart. What was that referencing?
I mean, yeah, I also think the stone is evil, but then I also really think it's like the stone represent, like, you got the stone and now your life is set in stone or something like that. I don't know, but it just feels like since you got the stone, nothing changes, and when nothing changes, you often say it's set in stone. So
So did Mabon want to get rid of the stone? If they're talking about in the back of your mind and the bottom of your heart, you didn't want to change. Excellent, Colin. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that if you still deep down want to not age, the stone is going to stay with you, right? He didn't want to get rid of the stone. Mabon was trying to, in a way. He would kind of casually just throw it away, but he still wanted it deep down. So we can infer that Mabon isn't ready to give up the stone or to change and grow. That stone keeps coming back because Mabon didn't want to change with the rest of the world. Excellent job, everybody. So at the beginning of the stone, Mabon is unhappy and worried about the changes that will come as he grows older. Remember, he sees that cottager that walks by and he's like, man, I don't want to be that old man. So when he rescues Dolly, his wish is to stop the passing of time forever. During the story, though, he learns that life without change would be meaningless and unsatisfying to him. Only when he gives back the stone and sees the world changing is he happy. So this helps to develop that theme, right? Symbolism and theme go hand in hand. They help us to develop that as well, because that symbol of the stone was helping us to discover the character's actions and consequences, of course, and how they react and what they learn from the story. So mirror and windows, what do they mean in the magic prison? So in the magic prison, mirrors are a symbol for Harwita's selfishness. Remember, he's just kind of staring at himself like, ooh, I look so good. As he spends more time looking at himself, the mirrors grow larger. In turn, the windows shrink, cutting off the world outside. Harwita is left in darkness to consider what the world would be like if all he had was himself. The windows are actually equally symbolic. So mirrors represent selfishness. When we look through a window, we see beyond ourselves. The more Harwita stares into the mirror, the bigger they become. The windows shrink until they are shut tight to the outside world. So the windows are a symbol for looking onward beyond ourselves. They grow wider when Prince Harwita begins to care for the bird and thinking about others. So the windows, basically shrink smaller because it's basically what we see. When we start to look onward beyond ourselves, meaning like thinking about others, the windows start to get bigger, especially as Prince Harwita starts to care for the bird. So that's what they're talking about, is that window is looking onward beyond ourselves or showing, empathy towards others. So symbols help develop that theme. So kind of wrapping this up here, and then we'll answer some polling questions here. So writers use symbols such as the stone and palace windows to develop themes. Once you identify a symbol in a story, how can you understand the way the symbol develops the theme? Here's how. So the first thing you need to do is describe the symbol. What is it? What does it look like? How does the author describe it? For example, what do the windows look like? Are they big, small, wide? Typically, if an author is going to throw in a symbol, they're going to use a lot of detail to describe it or really push that symbol further. So it's not going to be like, oh, wait, they have a pet cat. Okay, but that, do they really develop the cat? Like, is it something that is a symbol somehow? And maybe it's probably going to be a character, but, they're going to really add detail to it. Think about the characters, how the characters feel about the symbol. For example, Mabon is fascinated by the stone and is happy to possess it, at least the beginning of the story. However, as the story progresses, he's frustrated by it and maybe even a little afraid of it since it keeps reappearing, even though he tries to throw it away. So you got to think about, describing, is there a description of the symbol? And then how does the character feel about the symbol? If there's no emotions to it, if the character doesn't have a lot of emotions to it, it's probably not going to be a symbol in this case. Think about what the characters are doing when the symbol appears in the story. So for example, when Harwita is acting selfishly, the windows are mentioned and they get narrower. When Harwita thinks about others, though, the windows are mentioned again, but this time they grow wider and brighter. And then put it all together. What universal truth is the writer sharing with you using the symbols as support? For example, selfishness is like a prison of the mind is one of the themes developed by the growing and shrinking palace windows. So again, is there a description of the symbol? Think about how the character feels about it. Think about what the characters are doing when the symbol appears, and then you put it all together to help you develop the theme. All right, so this should be an easy one for you all. What object is a major symbol in the magic prison? And you're able to move that box around if you need to, just in case it's blocking. So is it A, apples, B, the couch, C, water, or D, the windows? All right, and we're going to present the answer here in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, excellent job, everybody. If you were paying attention, you remember the windows were that major symbol. So the reason why, because some students were asking about, well, wait, the windows. I'm confused. Why are they shrinking? It's because his viewpoint of the outside world and caring about others is shrinking because he's selfish only about himself. So when the windows start to shrink and go down, so you can kind of think of the windows behind me, when they start to shrink and get smaller, it's because his viewpoint on the outside world is getting smaller. The world to him is just him. He doesn't care about everybody else. But once he starts caring about others, the windows get bigger because he starts to care about others and thinks about others in the world. But D is the correct answer. That is a huge symbol in the magic prison. All right. So the more time Harwita spends looking at himself in the mirrors, the wider they grow because he's mainly focused on himself. What does the growth of the mirror symbolize? So again, we went through this, but hopefully you were paying attention. Was it Harwita's? And I'll put the polling here in just a moment. Harwita's growing selfishness, Harwita's growing awareness of the situation, Harwita's growing concern for others, or Harwita's growing sense of fear? What do those mirrors, the growth of the mirrors, represent? So not the growth of the windows, but the growth of the mirrors. All right, answer here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, excellent job. It is A is the correct answer. So you had to really look through that question to see, what are they asking specifically? So they're asking about the mirrors and not the windows. So that's why it's important to really look at the details of the full question. So that way when you're putting in your answer, you know for full fact that is the correct answer. So it's his growing selfishness. Remember, the more time he spends looking in the mirrors, the more focused he is on himself and not on the outside world. You can kind of think of like with a window, you're able to see things, right? You're able to kind of stare out the window and look at yourself, or not look at yourself, but look at the things that are outside. When you look at a mirror, you're only looking at yourself. All right, a hush had fallen upon everything about him. A dead silence was in the room. What does the silence of the prison represent? Is it a sense of danger? A lack of connection to anything? A sudden feeling of confusion? Or a loss of human companionship? So silence can also be a part of a symbol. What does that mean? What does that silence of the prison represent? All right, we'll get the answer here. I've only got 63% of students answering right now. Yikes. Even if you don't know, just take a guess. It's better to take a guess than to not answer at all. That way you can fully understand what you missed, or, if you get the right answer, which is always awesome. And it's okay if you totally mess up. That's totally fine. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great job, everybody. So we're kind of cross between that B and D, but in this case, it is B. So he loses that connection to anything. Remember, when there's a dead silence in the room, it's because the windows have completely shut. He has no way of being able to hear anything that's from the outside. There's nothing else that's coming in. So there's that lack of connection to anything. That hush had fallen everything around him, and a dead silence was in the room. Means that he's got a lack of connection to anything that's around him. He already had a loss for human companionship when he just went into the magic prison, but that's not what that dead silence represents here. All right, which detail from the magic prison best helps to convey the story's theme? Is it Harwita lives in an enchanted house? Harwita is 5 years old. Harwita has a fairy godmother, or Harwita cares for the birds. So what statement helps to convey the story's theme? A, B, C, or D? Like I said, even if you don't know, just take a guess. It's totally fine to take a guess. And if you get it wrong, that's fine too. No worries on that. And make sure that you're answering using the polling tools and not in chat. I'm getting a lot of students that are answering in chat, and you should be using your polling tools. There should have been like a little box that had A, B, C, or D. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent job. Yep. Harwita cares for the bird. Remember that no greater power than empathy, of course, or there's, talking about selflessness. That's all part of Harwita caring for the bird. Remember that bird, without the bird, it would totally not have any sort of theme to the story whatsoever. Harwita would be stuck. And then what would he do? There wouldn't be a theme to the story. So that's why D is the correct answer. It helps to develop that empathy. All right, this is a little bit smaller, so I'll read this one. When the windows opened, Prince Harwita clasped his hands with delight. He gazed out. Never before had the trees looked so tall and stately, or the white clouds floating through the sky so lovely. How does this description show how Prince Harwita changed during his experience in the magic prison? Is it that he appreciates the beauty of the outside world? He wishes he could fly like a bird and be free. He's sad that he is trapped inside the magic prison, or he wishes that he were playing outside. So again, that description, he's talking about clasping his hands with delight, gazing out. Never before had the trees looked so tall and stately. So how does this description show how Prince Harwita changed in his experience with the magic prison? Like I said, even if you don't know, take a guess. It's totally fine. We just got a couple more questions after this. Well, then your exit ticket. All right, I'm going to present the answer here in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Excellent job, right? He's clasping his hands with delight. If we think about delight, somebody's happy. Never before the trees looked so tall and stately, and the white clouds floating through the sky so lovely. Those are some great adjectives to describe something that's happy, something that's delightful, something that's exciting. So he's now appreciating the beauty of the outside world because he's been trapped away from it for so long. Awesome job, everybody. All right, what evidence from the text best supports the idea that Prince Harwita begins to change when he connects his own suffering to another living thing in the same situation? Is it A, poor little thing, he cried as he sprang up, you two are shut with this terrible prison. This thick darkness must be as hard for you for you to bear as it is for me. B, it seemed to be some tiny creature not far from him trying to move about. For the first time in nearly a month, he remembered the bird in its gilded cage. C, at last he heard or thought he heard a faint sound. He listened eagerly, or he went toward the cage, and as he came near, the little bird gave a sad chirp. So what evidence best from the text best supports the idea that Prince Harwita begins to change? Which one is showing that change that's occurring? All right, and I'm going to show the answer here in 5, 4. I did put 2 A's. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent job, right? That poor little thing, he cried as he sprang up. You too are shut within this terrible prison. He begins to show that empathy towards the bird because he starts to show pity towards it. This begins to show that change that occurs, that he now is not selfish, but instead selfless. All right, last question and hint. It's going to be helpful for your exit ticket. So what is a statement that we could use to determine the theme of the magic prison? Is it A, we can never change who we really are? B, freedom means different things to different people? C, we all have our own prisons that we're trapped in? Or D, happiness is found in thinking of others? Again, even if you don't know, take a guess. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2. Excellent. Yep. So we talked about there's no greater power than empathy being that huge one, but happiness is found in thinking of others could be another way to describe it. They're both in hand. They both work together in this case, because thinking about others is definitely something that you would do with empathy. Remember, empathy is where you can relate to the person because you've been in that situation before. You found that you are thinking about others. Excellent job. I'm glad that some students are saying like, I got this. This is good. It's a good feeling for sure. All right, a couple things before we try the exit ticket again. I'm really hoping, I was testing it out all yesterday and I think I got it down, but we'll see how it goes. Reminder, make sure that you are doing quiz 1.03. Remember that you have 3 attempts on that quiz too. So definitely use those attempts to get the highest score possible. It's going to take your highest grade, not your lowest or your last attempt. So make sure you're using that. And then make sure to review 1.05 on OMS and get those check marks. That way your progress is progressing. All right, so I'm going to put the link in chat here in just a moment. Hopefully this works. I'm praying this works. We'll see how it goes. But you're going to remember that your student ID number is in that grades tab on OMS. So I'm going to make sure that you have access to that. And then the password should still be OHVA. But let me get real quick the link. I had it here and then I lost it. So hang on a second. I'll send out the link to you in chat, but reminder, just maybe go into OMS real quick, go into the grades tab. Remember that student ID number is at the very, very top of the grades tab. Here we go. Got the link here. All right, here's hoping. Here's hoping. Remember, your username is your student ID number and the password is OHVA, all in caps. This does not work. I have a backup plan, so.
Does not work.
Somebody was saying something and they got cut off. What was that? Is it not working still?
Yes.
And I literally tested it out this morning. Okay. All right. Well, bummer.